Yeah, in the last chapter, chapter 7 of the laws of Deios, the Gemara tells us a story. Rabbi Akiva, the greatest of the sages of his time, there's a person who wanted to convert, and he said to him, "Teach me the Torah's entirety." Hillel, and Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Akiva is the inverse of it. And he asked Hillel to teach him the Torah's in entirety on one leg, meaning teach him one principle which encompasses the whole Torah. So he said to him, "What you do not want to be done to you, don't do unto your fellow." Rabbi Akiva, the famous Torah sage, says, "Zeh klal godel b'Torah." What's the all-encompassing principle of the Torah? V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. You should love your fellow as you love yourself. So what's the difference in Hillel's statement, what he shared with this person to convert? What's the all-encompassing principle? Don't do unto your fellow what you don't want to be done unto you. So that's recognizing the negative, and as a result of understanding that what you don't want to be done to you, don't do unto your fellow. Rabbi Akiva says the same concept. What's the all-encompassing principle which encompasses the whole Torah? V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Love your fellow as you love yourself. That's all-encompassing, but you realize the obvious question is, the Torah is divided in two parts. You have bein odom l'chavero, you have bein odom l'amoko. You have the laws which pertain between man, and between man and God. So how, by observing the laws which pertain to man and man, love your fellow as you love yourself, or don't do unto your fellow as you don't want to be done unto yourself, that addresses the part of the Torah which is between man and man. What about between man and God? Observing the Shabbos, dietary laws, taking the lulav, Yom Kippur, all these. What relevance does it have to do with man and man? Has nothing. Seemingly, they don't cross paths. But it's interesting. Before we answer that question, the Chofetz Chaim had shown in his opening introduction to the laws of Lashon Hara, not to speak negative about a fellow Jew, unless it has constructive value. You're in violation. You could be in violation over a short period of time of 14 positive commandments and 17 negative commandments. Now, if you observe the laws of Lashon Hara, of not to say what you shouldn't say about your fellow, those laws pertain to bein odom l'chaver and bein odom l'amoko. Some of those laws pertain to man and man and God. For instance, if you speak about a Kohen pejoratively, Torah says a Kohen being the elite class of the Jewish people, Torah says you must sanctify him. You always must treat him in a sanctified state. That you must treat him in a sanctified state is not between man and man. God says, I want you to treat this special segment of the Jewish people who are qualified to be my officiants. You must sanctify them. Always treat them, and they always have the priority. So if you speak negatively about them, pejoratively about them, where it doesn't have any constructive value, you're crossing that line. You're not permitted. If you speak about a Torah sage, where the Torah says you must revere the Torah sage, and by speaking negatively where it has no value, other than speaking negative about him, you're crossing the line of what? Bein odom l'amoko. That's between God and God. So we have one area of the Torah continuously, they cross, and there's this continuously going back and forth, man and God. And many laws are like that. That's the simple, but look how valuable it is. If a person really is careful and only says things which are positive, not negative, unless it has constructive value, what are you doing? You're addressing a very significant part of the Torah. Torah says you're not permitted to steal. If you're not permitted to speak about your fellow Jew, unless it has constructive value, is even a consideration. You're going to take something of his which is not yours. Are you going to damage him? Are you going to hurt him physically? You're not permitted to bring any level of pain or level of embarrassment. Verbally, are you going to bring pain by striking him? So I'm saying immediately, it actually touches upon everything that you see, you behave as that special human being because of this. Once you have things where you don't have your conflicts of interest, once you have that, you've already so-called, you're on that straight and narrow path. How you treat your fellow Jew. Why are you treating your fellow Jew as that? Because God said so. So as a result of that, you're already conditioned to not to behave as you choose to behave, but as you want to behave, because you already are conditioned and you're committed to what God wants. So we're discussing here the closing statement of how one has to conduct themselves despite our predilections, despite many things, how we have to deal with between one another. And then the rabbinic fences, where we spoke about the dustings of Lashon Hara. Anything which may be an allusion to something which may be negative, even to allude to it where the allusion is something which is not immediate. It doesn't bring about something immediately negative. It may have ramifications of that. You're not permitted to say it. Not at all. The example, which we didn't discuss yet, the Chofetz Chaim discusses a case which when we studied the work, you're in shul, the rabbi gives a sermon. Okay? You go to the beginner service. And, and George Rohr says, Larry, would you like to read the next passage? In the art scroll siddur that Rabbi Kalatsky once gave you, would you like to read that? That has the embossment on the front cover that somebody had donated it. Would you want to? And Larry reads it. So somebody says, how do you think Larry read it? Do you think he read well? That question is an inappropriate question. What's the value of that? Let's say he didn't read as well. Didn't read so well. That means you're pointing out something which is negative. Unless you say, well, because if he didn't, I want to help him. I'll tutor him, that he should read better next time. I'll speak to George. He should give more attention. Or he shouldn't call on him because he embarrassed him. And he didn't realize he embarrassed him. Okay, that has constructive value. But outside of that, what do you say about the rabbi's sermon? Was it good? What relevance does it have? It's purely negative talk. You're not permitted. Automatically, your lens has to be a very positive lens. You can't immediately see things in a deprecating context. You're criticizing already. What's the value of the criticism? What's the value of finding fault? No value. Automatically, you're already honing yourself to be sensitive to the natural tendencies of a human being, that we are critical. And we're only critical because that only empowers us. Because when you find the other fault in the other, that somehow inflates your ego. I'm better. And you're in your ivory tower passing judgment to everybody else except on yourself. As they say, used to be an expression which you don't hear lately, because the people this generation never heard it. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. You have the same warts, the same Achilles heels. You have the same shortcomings. What are you talking about the other person? Why don't you look yourself in the mirror? When you speak about the other person, that's a mirror image of who you are. So before you find fault in the other person, try to correct your own shortcomings. Automatically, it brings certain things to mind to become a better human being, a better Jew. Therefore, this area is all-encompassing because it touches upon so much between man and man. And once you become that quality person and you have things in perspective, then you understand, and it's because they're God-given, now you have to understand what God is, what God wants of you, only in your best interests. Restrictions are not restrictions to restrict you. Those are enhancements in your life. To spiritualize yourself, to condition yourself that you shouldn't be a slave of your desires. Most people are a slave of their desires. What are we doing today? Well, I think I need a vacation. Why didn't you just took a vacation? I need a break. You just had a break. I need some medication. You just saw your psychiatrist. You want to overdose. What are you doing? But again, you become a slave of habit. And most people are slaves of habit. But where did the habit emanate from? From desire. There's no free person like the one who engages in Torah study. You're cherus. Torah spiritualizes, that gives you the ability to take control of your life and make decisions and invest them, which are proper decisions where the result is positive. And this is a major part of it. People who fall victim to gossip, and they're into the gossip. What's new? I haven't seen you last week. I have a juicy piece of information. To me, something happens, you get on the phone and you call someone, and it goes viral. Everybody's talking to them. And if it be you, would you want it to go viral? You wouldn't. But people don't even see it as that. So all this is to clarify that lens, to become a more refined, spiritualized person, and you're no longer subject to a whim or to impulsiveness. You don't do anything impulsively. There used to be an expression. Remember when my children were young, there was a book written by two women. They were psychologists, and they used to say in their book over there how to deal with children: respond, don't react. That was whenever you raise your children, respond, don't react. A reaction brings nothing positive. Respond, evaluate it, and understand exactly how you should deal with that situation. That's the way you have to deal with it. Thing now. No, hospitality is a great mitzvah, where the Talmud says that hachnosis orchim, which is hospitality, is gedola mikabolas pnei hashchina, is greater than accepting the divine presence. Why? Because here Hashem is speaking. Tavram is paying a sikveh to Tavram. It's the third day after his circumcision, and all of a sudden he sees three wayfarers coming down the road, and he excuses himself and he says, "I have to attend to the needs of these wayfarers," which is hospitality. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Lahavdil elf abdol, he's speaking to the chairman of the board, and all of a sudden somebody says to the chairman of the board, "Excuse me, I have to speak to the janitor." Because there's a problem with the plumbing in the basement. For the cleaning crew, that they have this bathroom in the basement, it doesn't work, and they're coming back in 3 weeks. We have to fix it. Chairman Board says, "Where are you coming from? Do you know who I am, and do you know who we are?" I mean, it's a level of disrespect, of lack of consideration, not understanding who you're talking to. But yeah, when it comes to Hachnosas Orchim, Avram took the break. "Excuse me, I have to attend to the needs of these wayfarers." Hospitality. What's the value of hospitality? That even it's appropriate to interrupt your conversation with God to attend to it. Jews are they're hospitable. Jews are giving, they're hospitable. When we speak about hospitality, people don't get it right sometimes. A person's coming to your home, let's say for Shabbos or for a meal, and you say to your wife, "This person only likes certain types of foods, only certain types of pastry, only a certain type of wine." So your wife says to you, he should be happy enough that we're inviting him. He's going to set the menu, what I should prepare, what I should serve. We're generous, magnanimous, we're accepting him. You go eat in the restaurant if he wants to pick and choose his menu. Now, what's hachnosas orchim? What's proper hospitality? Addressing the needs and the wants of the guest. Not that you feel, "I've done what I want. I've done mine." What have you done yours? The whole concept is to make that person feel welcome, that his needs are being accommodated and his desires are being accommodated, as long as they're within reason. That's hachnosas orchim. Always you consider the person. It's not yourself. Because you consider the person, therefore you put yourself out to accommodate his needs. That's hospitality. With that mindset, when you speak about another person, are you speaking about the other person because you found fault in him, or because it has constructive value? You think about somebody else other than yourself. I want to inform him. The Chofetz Chaim writes that a person who speaks, the rabbi, and you weren't happy with his sermon, rather than sharing it with your fellow member of the shul, say, so what do you think about the rabbi? I don't think it was so good. Instead of sharing with him, go to the rabbi privately and say, Rabbi, we value you and we want you to really to be seen by the congregants in a positive light. I want to give you some certain insights, how to correct, to make it better. You can tell him maybe he should prepare better, he should use certain words which are not appropriate words, vocabulary-wise, subject matter. If you're really interested in the rabbi, what do you share with your seatmate? Share it with the rabbi in a private way, not to bring embarrassment or any level of negativity about the rabbi. The answer is no, because you're interested in yourself. I want to share my disappointment with my fellow seatmate here. So whenever we do things, bein odom lechaver, you have to think about the next one. It's not yourself. It's principle. People, they live for principle. But if the principle is them, they're going to be the victims of the principle. They don't want to be spoken about. The other person, it's principle. Because I'm a man of truth. And if you'd be the one who failed and they'd be speaking about you, you're a man of truth. Would you want to be spoken about? It's clear. The Chofetz Chaim says that's a clear confirmation. It's not v'ahavta l'recho kamocha. Because if it be you, you wouldn't want to be spoken about. So why are you speaking about the other person? These are all litmus tests to show you, are you seeing it right, or your conflicts of interest cloud your understanding and you're seeing the way you want to see it, not the way it is, or not the way it should be seen. Very often, Chaim writes, many things we believe it's either folklore or it's, if you want to be a saint, that's the way you behave. It's saintly behavior. It's what? It's admirable. It's admirable. But if you don't love your fellow as you love yourself, it's not the end of the world. You can be a good human being. But if you say, don't do unto your fellow what you don't want to be done unto yourself, this is not saintly. This is not sainthood. This is, you're a bad person. Because if you don't want to be hurt, why are you hurting the other person? So that really clarifies it, that you see it as is, and you can't somehow delude yourself and think it's something other than what it is. They're both saying the same thing. But to get it correctly and understand it, Reb Kiva says it in the negative rather than the positive, that you should understand exactly what the Torah is saying for exactly the reason that you're speaking about.
Right. So why then do we teach both if we just drive home the one about do not the one to others and keep driving that?
The Haftarech Gemocha is a verse in the Torah. Those words are the words which God said. Reb Kiva, who's the great Torah sage, is giving you the commentary on what that means. That's only those are words in the Talmud. You know what God means? Exactly this. If you want to love your fellows, you love yourself, the way you do that and the way you clarify that issue, don't do unto your fellow what you don't want to be done unto yourself.
Right. Well, now that you mentioned the other one is God's words, I certainly can't take issue with that, but you know what I mean. But
it tells us, Tov Shebro from the Gehenim. The best of doctors are destined to get him. Why? Now, a doctor, if you go into the field of medicine, you immediately assume certain levels of responsibility. Why? Because you have the ability to intervene and make a difference between life and death. And for whatever reason, you don't act or respond quick enough for a reason which is not satisfactory or sufficient, you're the cause of that person's death, losing a limb, being compromised. Doctor's responsible because you could have made the difference. Why didn't you make the difference? Well, I didn't want to be bothered. It's my off hours. What are you talking about? And if you, God forbid, would be the person who needs that medical care, would you want the doctor that's his off hours and God forbid, and you should die and be compromised? The same idea. But I don't want to be bothered. So if you're in a position where you have greater responsibility, if you fall short and you don't address your responsibility, there's greater level of culpability. So the doctor, which is always the one, which is always a question of life or death, or compromising a person's function, because a person naturally wants to be left alone, doesn't want to have this continuous burden of responsibility, the times where he turns a blind eye. But for turning that blind eye, it's inexcusable. So somebody once said, he was Reb Noach Weinberg's older brother, he said to me, if Tov Shebel Gerofen look behenim, Tov the Rabbonim legenim, person's a rabbi, he's also destined to Gehenna. Why? What's the meaning of rabbi? Rabbi is a teacher. A teacher has an obligation to teach what's supposed to be taught. So if you see the rabbi understands and he's recognized by his community as a person of standing, and he has representation, and he sees things which he should intervene, and he can make a difference educating them, intervening that at the point, not letting him cross certain lines, and he does not, for whatever reason, he's held accountable. Because you had the ability to make the difference, you didn't make the difference. One's on a physical level, the doctor is on a spiritual level. Sometimes when you compromise a community spiritually, it's a greater level of liability than physically. Physically is only a finite. You're forfeiting something which is temporary. If God forbid you compromise somebody's spirituality, it's something you've actually impacted, affected his eternity. Therefore, the level of liability is even greater. That's what he used to say. So again, so if you're in a position to say and make the difference, and you don't, you're held, there is liability. And how many times, because we don't want to be seen a certain way, or we don't want to put ourselves out a certain way, and we keep quiet. But you're in a position, you have no right to keep quiet. You should say something. And even two Jews, the example I always give, you're traveling on an airplane, and you're not an expert in Judaism, and you're sitting next to somebody who knows nothing about Judaism, and he happens to be a Jew, and you share with him a tidbit of something that you know, which will open up this person's eyes just in the sense of what Judaism is about, and you have the ability, and you don't. It was an invaluable moment. You could have made a difference in this person's life, and you passed on it. And what happens? After 120 years, they say, by the way, do you remember this incident? You know, you're flying down to who knows where, on the red eye, on the blind eye, whatever you want to call it. You could have spoken to your seatmate about this subject. Does he believe in God? Does he believe in the divinity of the Bible? Whatever, you could have spoken many things, which are very named topics, just to touch upon that person. Well, I think, I'm not a rabbi. I don't get involved in religion. Doesn't make a difference. Rabbi, not a rabbi. L'havdil elf avdolos. The Mormons, they give 2 years of service after they finish college to go on the road, l'havdil elf avdolos, to preach whatever that is, whatever they believe in. Because they feel, and the missionaries, and they tie their earnings to what they believe in. And it's built into the system. When they're brought up, they're educated that way. We have a responsibility. L'havdil elf avdolos. God gave this responsibility to every Jew. You're responsible for every Jew. You see your brother, God forbid, drowning, you have to intervene, you have to save his life. So anything which is positive to help a person, you're not going to talk about tefillin. It's talking about something that's too far beyond, it's too far-fetched. But the other topics, talk about our rights to the land of Israel. It was a divine gift. Whatever it is, talk about many things, but we don't. You talk about who knows what, the election, talk about Trump, the brag, attorney general, talk all these things. The more important things to speak about. Things which have eternal value, which will make a difference in this person's life. Why he came onto this earth, and when he's going to leave this earth, what he's taken away with him.